Right, so not made a video in a while. I've been busy doing my actual job, which is training fighters and fighting myself. So I am weighing in tomorrow for a bare knuckle fight. So just dropping a few tickets off, cutting the last bit of weight, and yeah, enjoying the sun. So on my way home from dropping tickets off, I was passing this church. I'm now in Rosington in Doncaster, and I thought I've been meaning to come here for ages and make this video, so I thought, why not just do it now? So yeah, this is St Michael's Church in Rosington, an 800-year-old church, but we're not actually here to look at the church. I'm more looking at the graves in here. So there was a man buried in this graveyard in the 1700s, a bit of a local legend, and he was one of the original kings of the gypsies. So the Romany gypsy people, you know, modern day, they call Tyson Fury the Gypsy King, but the name Gypsy King back a few hundred years ago didn't just refer to the best fighter, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure they could fight, but it was more like a leader role. There was a leader of the local gypsies, at least in their area. There was multiple gypsy kings who all, you know, claimed to be gypsy kings, whether it's through fighting or through the leadership that they had. So, you know, obviously they were spread out through the country, and yeah, so there's lots of people who claim to be gypsy kings back in the day. But there's one family who are one of the oldest and largest Roman and Gypsy families in the UK, and that is the Boswell family. And we are here today to see if we can find one of the original Boswell Gypsy Kings. So if you just jump on Wikipedia and type in King of the Gypsies, what will come up will be a list of all the most famous people who claim the title King of the Gypsies. And in that list of names, you'll see a man called James Boswell. Now, I think that there was a book written in 1822 which mentioned this James Boswell, and it mentioned where he was buried. It said he was buried next to an oak tree near the main doors of the church, and he was a gypsy king. His grave was surrounded by an iron railing, and people used to travel. Other gypsies and travellers would come from all over. When they were passing through Rosington, they would always stop here, and they would pour a flagon of ale into his grave. And apparently that legend lived on. So the guy was buried in 1708, I believe, or 1709. I will double check the numbers. But apparently, you know, this book was written in the 1820s, and apparently that was still happening then. So 100 years had gone past. So many generations had passed since that man had died. But again, travellers from all over the country, when they were passing Rosington, they would come here and they would pour ale into his grave to honour the old Gypsy King. Now, he's named in that book as James Boswell. But a quick little search on the burial records here does actually bring me to a man called Charles Boswell. So just recheck those burial records. So on the 30th of January 1708, a man called Charles Boswell was buried here in St Michael's Churchyard in Rosington. So there was a book written by a man called Joseph Hunter that came out in 1828, so a couple of years after this first account of the James Boswell. And this book in 1828 talks about Charles Boswell, and it talks about a man who he lived in this area in Rosington, and it says that his word among the gypsies was law. That's what it said. So that is describing to me a gypsy king, a man who is a leader, a man who people listen to. It also said that he wouldn't stand for people, you know, people from his own breed, other Boswells, stealing and, you know, making mischief in the local area. So he was kind of the law and order, if you like, of the local gypsies. So I believe that this Charles and James are the same person. It's just a conflation of names. And listen, a lot of times when you're doing gypsy genealogy, and if you've got any Romany links in your family, you will notice there's lots of nicknames and there's lots of names. You know, people get called names, and it's happened in my family before. You think someone is called one name, they get called a name their entire life. My granddad was called Harry. My entire life, I thought he was called Harry. Turns out his name was Thomas. Harry was never his name. And this happened a lot, especially in the gypsy community. People had multiple names. Sometimes they use the father's name. Sometimes they use the mother's maiden name as the last name, and so on and so forth. So it's also possible that this James Boswell, like I say, the record says it's Charles Boswell who was buried here, but this James could be a relative, could be a brother, could be a son as well. So there could be multiple buried here. So I have been looking round at the graves, and it does say when I've searched online that there is no longer the original grave marker that was here is no longer there. The oldest grave I can find is like the late 1700s. So the guy called James Stovin, who was buried here in the late 1700s, that's like the earliest grave I can find. He's actually got a relative here. So this is a different James Stovin. So that must have been a big local family. He was buried there in 1808, aged just 17. So I'm guessing that's the son of this other James Stovin that I found. So I've had a good walk around the church, and it seems like this is the door it's referring to. So it's on kind of this this area. These tend to be like the older graves here. So as you go around there, the graves, you know, you get into like 1900s over there. So this is the oldest grave that I've found so far, and this is James Stovin, 1789. You can just see that there. So that's 1789. You can see the family crest, which is also echoed on there. So I believe that could be this guy's son. But yeah, apart from that, there's nothing really around. There is these, you know, partial gravestones. Whether these could be part of it, I don't know. Now, it did say there was an iron railing around the grave. Could this have been, you can see the stone here, could this have been where the iron railing was? Well, it looks pretty much like this is a Stovin grave. These are possibly other Stovin family members. But on one record, it does say that there's two pieces of a gravestone left. Two pieces. We're in the right area here. You know, could that be our guy? Could this be, you know, the location of the grave? We don't know. Obviously, the graveyard has changed over the years. Gravestones go missing, get moved. Maybe it could even be outside of this boundary. Was this boundary here? We don't know. There's some other graves here, but these are a little bit, you know, that's 1993 in that grave there. So that's yeah, what's this here? 1805. So yeah, so that's a pretty. I mean, that looks older than it is. 1974, 1993. So this is an older one. There's some older graves here, but nothing that matches our guy. But I think we are in the right area. Yeah, somewhere in this area would have been his grave. So just having a look around some other areas. So we've got, look at this. So there's all these these are all ashes burials. So you can see there's an very old worn grave there, broken to pieces. So you can see the very oldest graves are probably non-existent. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like we'll be able to find the exact grave spot of this Charles Boswell. It does mention it was near a door, which was quite close to the door there, and it mentions it was under the shade of a tree as well. But I'm guessing the trees look a little bit different to what they did a few hundred years ago. So yeah, but yeah, just thought it was an interesting story. One of the old Gypsy Kings, and sometimes these legends and stuff get passed down in the family. So if you are related to the Boswell family, and you've maybe heard this legend in your family, maybe it's a distant grandfather. So talking about that as well, is we know that Tyson Fury, the current king of the Gypsies, if you like, is also a direct descendant of the Boswell Gypsy Kings. So not our Charles Boswell. I don't know how he would fit in to the family that, you know, he's obviously from the same Boswell family that Tyson is from. But Tyson's, I believe his 7th great grandfather was a man called John Boswell, and he went by the nickname Black Jack. Obviously Jack being a nickname for someone called John, and the term black, which got used a lot of the times back in the day, especially with the Romany people, referred to the darker skinned Romanis, and you still see a lot of it today. So I've got Romany Gypsy friends, and some of them are very, very dark skinned, and that would tend to indicate that they've got this dark skin gene from this Boswell family. There's even a saying in some parts of the UK, black as a Boswell. So there was very dark, and there was referred to as black. Again, John Boswell, one of the great grandfathers of Tyson Fury, was known as Black Jack. So yeah, obviously, and around that same timeline is our guy Charles Boswell. So he could be, you know, definitely a cousin, possibly even a brother, interrelated into that family. So yes, very, very interesting. There's lots of other Boswell Gypsy Kings and Gypsy leaders. Again, if you look on Wikipedia, it gives you a nice big list of them, and there's a lot more that are not included in that list as well. When you start doing Romany genealogy, lots of these Gypsy leaders crop up, and again, lots of them are from the Boswell family, one of the original and largest Romany families. Again, the Romany sort of gene, if you like, is coming from kind of India way. You know, that's sort of where the darker skin came from, and they migrated, you know, through into Europe, and then there's Roma people all over Europe, different countries and stuff. But that is, you know, when I've done DNA testing with some of my Roman and Gypsy friends, that is where it links back to. And lots of us have connections to Roman and Gypsy families. I have connections in my family as well. But if you're connected to the Boswells, maybe your last name, your surname even is Boswell, then you are descent from the original Gypsy Kings, the original Romany Gypsy leaders. Right, and that is me done in the graveyard. I'm off to cut some weight now. One final little story about this Charles Boswell, when you start looking into it, is it was very fond of a black cat. And it went everywhere with him. And apparently, after he died, he was buried. And a few weeks later, the cat died. And they opened his grave and buried the cat with him. And there's a bit of a local legend, what I've seen on a page, saying at midnight, if you come in this graveyard, you can sometimes see a black cat. So maybe I'll come back and the cat will show me where this grave is. So somewhere here, that's my best guess. Make sure you like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.